Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Actually, let's go back to this just for a second. So things have fundamentally changed. There's no way around that. Everybody's in quarantine right now. The world is, going through a big shift with this coronavirus thing, and that can actually benefit you in the case of this class. So this was originally an online environment. It still is an online environment, so ideally it shouldn't change anything, but it has changed the seated components, and as such, that means that we now have drop-in sessions for the seated versions. And I'm going to give you that information as well. Now, the drop-in sessions are with English instructors who teach 111, so they are not going to be with me. I'm actually doing some drop-in sessions for English 112. That doesn't mean you don't have access to me. It just means that I'm not in charge of those drop-in sessions. I'm going to give you the links to those sessions. They are twice a week. Off the top of my head, let's see. The first one's on Monday at 9 or 10. We're still sorting out that time. And the second one is on Wednesday at 6. So that gives you two different options that you can use for, again, these drop-in sessions with those instructors. These are not lectures. They're just, hey, I have a question or I'm a little confused about this. We're all teaching the exact same information, so they're going to be able to answer your questions about that information. I'm also going to be keeping virtual office hours going forward. I will link that information as well. If you're interested in joining, you need to be signed into your Google account, the school Google account that the school gave you. And what I'll do is I'll post those times as part of this announcement, and then that way you can go ahead and drop in on me. I'll be happy. I'll be sitting at the computer. I'll set up and set those office hours for something like an hour at a time. And then you can just drop in and say, Mr. Bowman, I'm really confused. And the software that I'll use will be Google Meet. And so that'll allow you to share your screen, or I can share my screen, or whatever we need to do. It's very versatile, and that'll allow us to communicate. So this gives you some additional opportunities that were not there at the start of the class. You may say, wait a minute, why weren't they there at the start of the class? And it's honestly because now everyone at the college is working from home, and because we're all working from home, it means that we actually have more fluidity as concerns our time and how we can manage our time. So by all means, use these resources. Please use these resources. We've provided them for really everybody inside the English courses in order to be able to give them access and be to us and to be successful. Now let's talk about the forthcoming assignments. You're working on MLA, and by the way, I'm going to post this early because I want to set this up so that you have those resources going into next week. So you're completing the MLA assignment as of this video. You should really, by the time this video posts, you should be done with that. The next assignment that you have is not due until the beginning of April, and it's the critique. And the critique asks you to look at one of these articles. You must use one of these articles and to say whether or not that person has done an effective job of conveying the information inside that article. Now, that means that you are, again, unpacking it. You're not just telling your reader what the article is about. If you're only telling the reader what the article is about, you're not really critiquing. I'm calling your attention here. Inside the 4.0 module, at the very bottom, you have two resources here. One is the critique. It tells you how, and then the second one shows you an example of a critique essay. It's not a critique essay of one of the ones, the articles that's listed there, but it is a sample critique nonetheless. So at the basis, what you're going to be doing inside a critique is summarizing, stating the purpose as you understand it. Don't worry about, do I have the purpose right? Say what you think is the purpose and why you think that's the purpose by showing evidence from the article. Assess that purpose. Does the author achieve that purpose inside the article? Because it's one thing to say, here's my goal, and then that person does or doesn't achieve the goal. If you need an example of this, we all have had that experience where we're talking to somebody, we know what we want to say, and we say it wrong, and so the other person understands, well, this was their purpose, but they didn't really accomplish that purpose, right? You say something like, if I'm talking about my wife and I want to say, oh, that dress, looks really good on you, or something like that. If my intent is to compliment her, that's my purpose, but maybe I don't accomplish that purpose. See, there it is again. Maybe I don't accomplish that purpose because I say something that is unintentionally insulting. Oh, that yeah, that dress looks, it looked good on the model, it looks good on YouTube, you know, so something like that. So I didn't quite achieve my purpose there. And then you can respond to it. And in responding to it, make sure that you're fair, because that's an important aspect of this. Just because you don't like somebody's purpose doesn't mean that you have a right to be able to say, well, that, you know, this article is bad. So as a quick example, in reading something like Frederick Douglass's autobiography, he talks about his time being a slave. And so in reading this, you could say that this is not the most entertaining thing ever. It's an account of somebody being a slave, but it's extraordinarily important. It is extraordinarily important to history. It is extraordinarily important to our ability to understand what life was like for people who were slaves. And so if you say, you know, I wasn't entertained, that's not fair. That's not fair. That's not the purpose of his work. His purpose is not to entertain you, is to inform you. And so in your response, if you're saying, oh, I wasn't entertained, you're not being fair. So make sure that you're fair. Make sure you understand. Start with what you think the purpose is, assessing the purpose, and then respond by saying, actually, I was deeply affected by this information. I had not understood that slavery was so difficult for people, and so forth and so on. Again, you can tell that I teach humanities, Southern culture. Okay, so I want to give you another example as well of why you have to do additional research. I'm going to give it with the parallel. I'm a Marvel guy, so you just bear with me for a second. Here's the movie Black Panther. And in the movie Black Panther, T'Challa is fighting Killmonger. Black Panther is fighting Killmonger because there's this, you know, sort of dynamic between the two of them, and there's this power struggle between the two of them, and so forth and so on. If we want to understand whether or not this is a good movie, a good superhero movie, we can't do it in isolation. Yes, we can summarize it, and we could state what we think the purpose to be, and we can respond to that purpose. But in order to effectively respond, we need something to compare it to. And so, by the way, hint, hint, a little bit of compare and contrast here with narration. You should still be using the rhetorical modes to accomplish your purpose. In order to compare it, we might compare it to, the sort of conflict that occurs between, as a direct kind of parallel in the first movie, the origin story between Captain America and Red Skull. Like, what is the interaction between them? What is the dynamic that takes place between them? So we might briefly summarize this and then compare and contrast the two movies in order to be able to say, actually, this is a really good movie as far as superhero movies goes, because it follows kind of from other really good movies inside that universe. So this gives us a grounding. It gives us a measuring stick. In order to measure effectively and discuss this particular movie, we must do so in the context of the larger discussion. So as you come back over here to the course, I'm going to back up to the critique again. As you look at these articles inside the critique, so let's say that you're looking at the Mystery of Baden Lake. Again, you're not summarizing it, you're evaluating it, you're critiquing it. And by the way, one other thing, you don't have to critique on just the basis of these are the things I don't like. Critiques can also be, oh, these are the things that the article did really well. So in looking at Smith's article, we can say, here are the things that she did really well in her article, and here are the things that she could have improved on. But the only way we're going to really know that is to go and do additional research. There are other articles out there on the Baden Lake incident, and as such, you can go and read those as well. And then that'll give you a better understanding of, oh, wow, Smith did a really good job of telling the story, or, she didn't do such a great job, because actually I read this other article in the Charlotte Observer, and they did a much better job of telling the story. And so hers is kind of a knockoff of that, or, what have you. There are a couple of different inroads that you can take, but it's essentially exactly the same thing as this. How good of a movie is this? Well, let's measure it up against a different movie. This is a really good movie because there's a good dynamic. And actually, this is a pretty good movie too, because it has a similar yet different dynamic for the origin story. Okay, so same thing. All of these give you various inroads that you can take. The sign language gloves, you might go and research people who use sign language and what do they think about these gloves. Magic, in Philip Pullman's article, why do people get duped into things like snake oil salesmen and things like that? This is especially applicable right now with all the bad information going around about this virus. And then, these others as well. I'm going to just kind of leave those off because I think you have the idea. Okay, if you have any questions, if you want to contact me, if you want to be in touch with the instructors with the drop-in sessions, again, I'll provide that information as part of this announcement. Otherwise, please stay safe out there, and I'll send out another announcement next week. Okay? All right, see you.